Francis Freeman from the University of Delaware, and you're tuned in to Black History live on stage. Tonight, our obscure but phenomenal moment in Black history will be centered around the multi-talented Hazel Scott.
Hazel Scott was the first African-American woman to have her own show broadcasted on national television. She was a classical and jazz performer. She could play piano and sing. On top of all of that, she was a widely revered dramatic actress. Scott spoke out against discrimination and segregation. She used her position to decrease the negative representation of Black individuals on television. She had started performing at a very young age and was offered many opportunities before the age of 10. Born June 11, 1920, Hazel Scott was quickly recognized as a child prodigy. Her mother, Alma Scott, was a musician, and her father, Thomas Scott, was a scholar who raised her in the Catholic Church. Hazel Scott was trained by her mother in Harlem, New York. At the age of 3, Hazel Scott was able to play the piano by ear due to having perfect pitch. This was discovered when she was found playing Gentle Jesus by ear.
But wait, there's more!
She was accepted into Juilliard School of Music at 8 years old to study under Professor Oscar Wagner from 1928 to 1938. Scott was a part of her mother's all-girl jazz band at age 13, playing both the piano and the trumpet. By this time, she was known to have been trained in classical, Broadway, and jazz genres. Between the ages of 15 to 16, Hazel performed on radio shows, but she started her own shortly after she turned 18. During this time, she was performing at the high-profile venue of the Roseland Dance Hall and was the leading attraction in the Cafe Society. This gave her a gateway to start her own television show. Early in her career, Scott took part in many musical films, most noticeably Rhapsody in Blue in 1945, Broadway Rhythm in 1944, I Doed It, Sing Out the News in 1938, Priorities in 1942, and Something to Shout About, which was her film debut. Scott would only play herself wearing her own clothes to protect her own image. Scott turned down several venues due to the fact that they were segregated. At the time, Scott was earning $75,000 a year on her own. On July 3, 1950, Hazel Scott hosted her own television show on the Dumont Network. This made her the first African-American woman to have her own show. Her show was 15 minutes long. It was a musical show that aired 3 times a week. During this time, Hazel was accused of being a communist, which pushed her to speak out in order to defend herself. She voluntarily appeared before the House of Un-American Activities Committee, HUAC. It was shortly after she came to speak up for herself that her show was canceled. The Hazel Scott Show ran until September 29, 1950. It was canceled in only 3 months due to the loss of sponsorship after Scott was listed on the Red channels during the Red Scare. After losing her show and being unable to find work in America, Hazel Scott moved to Paris, France, in 1957 to escape political persecution of the McCarthy era. Scott returned to America a decade later in 1967 to keep up with the Civil Rights Act and continue her career. Although she did not reach the same level of fame that she once was, Hazel Scott continued to perform in small nightclubs, record new music, and make television appearances. Scott may have been slightly less prevalent in the music scene, but she became increasingly more active in the civil rights movement. In 1963, Hazel Scott participated in a march with activist James Baldwin while away from America. Scott also pushed for a lawsuit against a Pasco, Washington restaurant that refused to serve her. She later used her platform to enact the Washington State Public Accommodations Act, which prohibited discrimination based on race, color, sex, etc. Hazel Scott was married to Adam Clay Powell III, born November 29, 1908. He was known as the flamboyant Baptist minister and New York's first Black congressman representing Harlem, New York. He had divorced his first wife in order to marry Hazel in 1945, Stamford, Connecticut. Their relationship was deemed scandalous due to Powell's affairs. They were said to have been a glamour couple during the time due to being America's leading black power couple in the 1940s through the 50s. Both of them were heavily involved in civil rights activism. Powell and Scott had one child. Scott was famously known for her Bach to boogie style, combining classical music with jazz. One of Scott's famous quotes, "Why would anyone come to hear me, a Negro, and forced to sit beside someone just like me?" was said in regards to segregated venues. She passed away at Mount Sinai Hospital in Manhattan on October 2nd, 1981. She was diagnosed with cancer in September of '81 and passed away later that year.
Thanks for tuning in tonight, folks.
She performed her last show a few months prior to her death.
And only Hazel Scott to wrap us up. This is the Cason song.
Over hill, over dale, we have hit the dusty trail, and those caissons go rolling along. Counter march right about, hear those wagon soldiers shout as those caissons go rolling along. For it's high, high here in the field artillery. Call off your numbers loud and strong, and where'er we go,